Part 1 Intro The What.
Hi everyone, welcome again to Diane and the Written Words. Today I bring you a bookish video, just presenting one of my goals or my challenges that I do when reading, which is a bucket list, essentially. It's a scratch bucket list that you can create yourself, and I'll leave a video up here and down below as well on how to do it. The thing itself is fairly easy to do, but I'm not going to show you how mine came out because my laminated abilities, let's say, they're quite limited. But basically, the idea here is that I wanted to create a bucket list of books that I wanted to read. And I started looking online at least like the best 100 books that you have to read, or the best books of English literature, because in particular I was looking at English and North American literature that I wanted to read, because growing up I wasn't exposed to that as much. So you will see that it's quite biased towards English and American literature, but I do have other goals that I'll make videos for, so hopefully everything balances out and I end up reading quite diversely when it comes to cultural background anyway. So I looked at all of those lists and I put together a list of 81 books. Why 81? Because I had 9 times 9, that's all the reason. So it's a list of 81 books that I want to read and that obviously when I made that list I hadn't read. As a result, these aren't necessarily books that I'm recommending right now. It's just things that everyone seems to have read and that I want to read as well. But I will tell you later some of my favorites so far. I have only read 11 out of those 81. So there's a lot of work to do, and you will see that when I talk about my reading plans and TBRs and things like that, I will sometimes reference the scratch bucket list. So for example, this month I've got it here, The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and you will hear some of my thoughts in my wrap-up for this month.
2 Highlighted Books.
Some of my favorites so far have been Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, which it's a novel about the Todd family, and the protagonist is Ursula Todd. She goes through life and things happen to her and she dies. And so then the story starts again, but her circumstances then change and she has a different life. And then at some point she dies again and she gets reborn again, and we hear the story slightly different every time. And it was such an interesting concept to have this, what would have been, what would have happened if she didn't die at birth, if she didn't die, as a result of a war, things like that. And still, despite the recyclic nature of the narration, it didn't feel repetitive, and I was hooked from the beginning. I would really recommend that book. And then another one that I really loved so far, The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffeneger. It's about Claire and Henry is a time traveler. So these two protagonists meet at different times in both of their lives. And it's a really clever time traveler book. I think is the only one that I've read so far where time traveling doesn't create a lot of plot holes and makes sense. And it's not just a plot device to make the story interesting, but it's the actual story. So you get to really experience how it would be to time travel the way that Henry does it in this book, and the consequences of it, and what it means for Claire as well, where they might go to bed and then she wakes up and he's gone because he can't really control when he time travels. So she says that sometimes the hardest things happen to the one that stays. She's got this waiting and longing to be with him, and she never knows, or she often doesn't know when she's going to meet him again. And it's also quite interesting how they first meet. They have different first meetings because of how time traveling works there. And I would highly, highly recommend that book. And then out of the rest of the books that we have, this month in my TBR, I had The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Skloot. And I hope to at least start it. I haven't yet. I have a book from the library first that I want to read and return. But this is one of my most anticipated books of the whole list, and that's why I put it in the list actually. For some of them, I read short summaries and I decided whether I was interested or not. This was one that I already knew I wanted to read, and I got it for my birthday in April, and I still haven't read it. So highly anticipated. Another one that we'll see what happens is Emma from Jane Austen. I actually started the audiobook from the library, but I think with audiobooks, what happens to me is that I get distracted because I'm listening to the audiobook while I'm doing other things. And so with Emma, I really didn't get into the story, and I DNF'd the audiobook in the hopes that I would then read it in physical form. So it's here. This is a compilation of Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, and Emma. I read Pride and Prejudice last year, and I enjoyed it, even though it's not really my genre. And I connected with the characters, but the plot wasn't really for me. I still think that I can get a lot from Jane Austen, and I find her writing beautiful. So I'm just gonna keep going with Emma this time. The other day, I also got Anne of Green Gables here. It is in my library, but I found this edition and I think it's really pretty. And I think sometimes having a pretty book makes me more excited about reading it. I know it's silly, but it really works. It motivates me. And now I'm more motivated about this one. And then another one that I have is a compilation of Charles Dickens. One of the ones that's in my list is Great Expectations, and the other one is A Tale of Two Cities. They're both in the list. I actually started A Tale of Two Cities about 5 years ago, but my English wasn't that great, and I found it really difficult. The beginning of this book is amazing. It's one of the better known starting sentences. If you've been under a rock or if you don't belong to the English speaking world, this is the one that starts. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, and so on. And also it talks about the two cities that are London and Paris, and I've visited both and love them both. So I just want to experience them through the book and through Charles Dickens' writing. I've only read several tales of Christmas, A Christmas Carol, and then a few other tales related to Christmas, and they're really enjoyable. I think Charles Dickens has a special skill in how he characterizes, and so I'm looking forward to that. And then in Instagram, a few people have said how good Great Expectations is. So I hadn't really thought much about it. I hadn't looked into it very much. I just knew it was one of the big classics. But I'm now also looking forward to that one.
Part 3. The stats.
The last part of this video today, I just wanted to show you some of the stats about this bucket list because I think it's important to be aware of the kind of things that we are reading. They're very general. I haven't dissected all the books in there. Anyway, I've made a few graphs because I love graphs, and I'm going to tell you a bit about them now. First graph I have here is male and female authors. I've got 28 books by female authors and 53 by male authors, which is not surprising because I took the data from other people's recommendations, and I do think that when it comes to classics and literary fiction, there are loads of male authors. Which is funny because the two books that I've loved the most so far are both from female authors. That's Life After Life from Kate Atkinson and The Time Traveler's Wife from Audrey Niffeneger. So I will do a wrap up when I've read more of them, and we'll see whether the numbers are skewed then. The second graph here is
by continents of the authors. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that the books are set in that continent. And in fact, there's a couple that are set in Africa, but where the author was European or North American. But we have one book from Central America, which is The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, I actually didn't check. And he's from the Dominican Republic. We have just one book from Africa. That's going to change a lot when I do my Books Around the World challenge, which I'll do a video about. And the book from Africa is A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bear. And that's The Memories of a Boy Soldier. Then I have just two books from Asia, which are A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth and The Winged Up Bird Chronicle, a novel by Haruki Murakami. So we have a Japanese one and an Indian one. There is also Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie. The author is Asian and European. And we have A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry, and he's Asian and North American. Then I have 31 books from Europe. So we have the likes of the likes of the Bronte sisters. We have Charles Dickens, George Eliot, David Mitchell, Kazuo Ishiguro. And then we have 41 books from North America, where the author is from North America. We have John Irving, Truman Capote, Donna Tartt, Jack Kerouac, and many more. The third graph I've got here is the year of publication. A lot of classics were published throughout a couple of years because they were published as a series. And so I've put the latest year, the year where the novel was completed. And we have earlier than 1800s, I only have the Aesop Fables. Then from 1800 to 1850, we have 7, 10 from the 51 till 1900, 15 from 1901 to 1950, 34 from 1951 to year 2000, and 14 after the year 2000. And those are all the stats I have. For conclusions and questions for you. What I'm trying to do with this bucket list is to read 1 or 2 books a month and to keep going until I'm done. I mean, do you have any list like that? Like, it's not a TBR that's going to take 1 month to do or maybe to be revisited in the future, but a short amount of books. And it's not a complete list of books that I want to read, but it's a big list. I mean, 81 books. It's almost what I read in a year. And if I split it in 1 or 2 books a month, it's going to take forever. But what do you feel about how do you feel about lists, and how do you compile your reading lists if you have them? I'd be quite interested in that. If anyone is super well read and has done a lot of them, just let me know as well. As I said, I've only read 11 of these books so far. So if you have any recommendations on which books to start with, or some of them that you really liked, then let me know as well. And that's all I have today. You will hear more about this bucket list as I go along, and I hope to hear how you get along with your reading plans as well. I'll see you next time.